This is the Amazing Education Podcast. Powered by the Ames Community School District, I'm your host, Eric Smith. On today's episode, we are joined by Dr. Anthony Jones, Director of Equity for Ames Schools. We're going to have an amazing conversation about racial injustice and how professional development and conversations of race can be embedded within school districts. All right, Dr. Anthony Jones, we're in episode 2 here of Amazing Education Podcast. We needed 2 episodes. The first one flew by, so I think we're going to pick up where we left off, but I would like to focus a little bit more on racial injustice during this episode. And I know that, in the last episode we talked about how race and equity, they move together oftentimes. But, we'll focus on that a little bit more on this one. And one of the things that I have heard you say more than once is that we're really, we have this plexiglass here. Yeah. We're still in coronavirus pandemic, but I've heard you say more than once that there's really 2 pandemics going on in our society. So I want to give you an opportunity to touch on that.
This is, this has been really tough, right? So even realizing at the beginning of this week, there was a news report that came out from the Des Moines Register in Grinnell, right outside of Grinnell. There was a black body that was burned on the side of the road in the ditch. Michael Williams has been identified. I haven't heard all of the details about it, but when you think about the pandemic that has been going on, a lot of focus has been around COVID, of course, right? But when we talk in terms of the things that have happened in between that, and I can think about my own anxiety. So for instance, of course, George Floyd tipped the scale, as well as Breonna Taylor. But Ahmaud Arbery also was something that grabbed my attention as well. And, he was jogging through a community. And I like to go out and jog in my community and go to the track and different things like that. And even being a part of the community, when I saw the news report and saw the details behind it, it was really a concern for me to even want to go out to jog in my community or go out to a neighboring track or a park. That is an unrest. That is something that you can't collect data on. You don't drop that when you walk into your job, right? You don't drop that as a student when you see that on the news. You don't drop that at the door when you go and sit in a class. Or now, having to decide whether, you go out into the community and get exposed to COVID, but add the factor of like your life is in jeopardy, your physical body is in jeopardy because of the color of your skin just by going out to exercise, right?
Yep.
So that is definitely something that has been heavy. And even in a place of, you could be like, a place of isolation because, we have a small population of black and brown students in Ames. And I know sometimes when it seems like, a group of students are together, it just seems like, man, we got a lot of diversity in Ames.
Yeah.
We're really spread out. So even in our district, even though we've increased a little bit of our staff diversity,
yep.
We're still spread out.
Yeah.
And so, it's not a lot of opportunities for us to get together to check in, to make sure that we're okay. And so there's a lot of social, racial unrest in that area. But also, let's look at the pandemic of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So there are also some data out there that states that even in COVID-19, the people who are dying and being affected the most by COVID-19 are people of color.
Yeah.
So black and brown
I saw
people.
that too.
So, I mean, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So you can't go out and jog, right?
Yeah.
You can't go out and go and want to go and hang out with some friends,
yeah.
And go to a cookout or something like that. Because if you get COVID, there's a high chance that you may go to the doctor. You may not get treated because of the color of your skin. So all those things are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
But yet we need to make sure that we get good grades and not get suspended, right? So,
So in the last episode, I alluded to conversations that are uncomfortable for people. This is oftentimes, I think, for a lot of people. And listen, I'm there. I mean, I've had moments. One of the things that you and I, when we talk about these things, in a structured way, it's like, embrace the discomfort, I mean, because it takes a lot of like personal reflection, and I will, one, say thanks to you for kicking it off and working with Dr. Spikes and Swalwell, because I'm doing more reading on it. I'm having more conversations about it than what I wouldn't before, and yet I reflect on a conversation that you and I had. I went to meet with you unrelated to this, and we had what I felt was a great conversation. And but like these are like about you, Ryan, and these are things that I haven't had to actively think about. So how do we have these conversations as a school district? One of the things that I think is good right now is that this is a conversation that is happening not just in schools, but it's much more mainstream than what it was before. And it's shedding light on a lot of things. Right. And so how do we take that and implement the work in a school district?
Yeah. We're right in the heat of the moment, right?
Yep.
And so our habits are we respond to whatever the need is within the school system.
Yep.
So a lot of our conversations have been based around responding to the need at hand, right? How do you get to school back to some sense of balance? I'm not going to use normalcy, right?
Okay.
But some sense of balance to where students can come in and get their education. And so in that fast-paced environment, which even without our current situations with COVID and school closures, we function like that. We're always in the heat of the moment.
Yep.
Our school system is set up like that. So when the bell rings in the morning, students know that it's time to go to class, right? And then when the bell rings again after class, you got a few minutes to take care of your personal needs, which could be check in on friends and get a few laughters and go to the bathroom, maybe get a drink of water, and then get back to class when the bell rings. So everything is constantly moving from the time a student enters our building, right? We're set in a fast-paced moment. We have 45 minutes to finish this class. I got some standards that I need to make sure I cover. Where do we put in, let's stop and have a conversation or a dialogue around how we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And how do you speed that up, right? Because you might go around even with adults and you have a general conversation. So how is everyone doing?
Yeah.
Fine, okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, good. But if somebody says, hey, I'm really struggling right now, and I can guarantee you, because of the way that we've been socialized, the way we've been kind of functioning, that we're only going to be so much patient to listen to the concerns of the individual. So we have to start prioritizing what is important, right? What is really important. And we only get glimpses of that when we lose someone, when someone passes away, when we have a student who commits suicide, right?
Yep.
Or die by suicide. Then we reflect on the importance of what matters, and then we move on again, right? And we never put in place the importance and the value of the person that is sitting across from us. And so we have to start pausing and have those conversations and those dialogue.
Yeah.
And it can't be I'm feeling dialogue-y today, right?
Yep.
It has to be embedded in the system. So before we get to the nuts and bolts, we're going to have a dialogue, a conversation around, this topic, and then we're going to check in with all of our members, right? And so it has to be intentional. Why? Because we go by schedules.
Yep.
We have a meeting set in our calendar every day, right? And then even in the event, we have an agenda item, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at a classroom setting, they have a lesson plan, a unit plan. They have a minute by minute of what students are supposed to be doing. It has to be embedded in that everyday structure, intentionally.
So let's talk about racism a little bit. everyone would agree that maybe not everyone should agree that overt racism, that's bad. Right. And that's what people point to.
Right.
Like, yep, that's bad. That's not me. I don't support that. Mm-hmm. I don't perpetuate that.
Yeah.
I in no way am I affiliated with that. I am beyond that. So that's good, right? Like, mm-hmm. I'm good to go. Mm-hmm. I'm done with this work.
Right.
Not so much.
Not so much.
No.
Yeah.
It racist and you need racial stamina. I mean, you need to go through. I personally am in a much different place than what I was 2 years ago, just because of the conversations that I've been allowed to have that have been started for me. I've listened a lot. I've read more. I've gone through the exercise of having the conversation, but not everyone is there in our society, not just in education. That's not what we're talking about, though, is that overt racism. No. What are we talking about?
Right. There is that piece, I think,
sure.
that we don't talk enough about because, we have the conversation when we talk about overt racism. We typically believe that was something that happened back in the 60s.
Yeah, that's the KKK.
Right, KKK.
Yep.
But not only the KKK, but it only functions, overt racism only functions in KKK.
Yeah.
But we don't see it, it's hard for us to see it in everyday, like overt, right?
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, I think we've leaned more toward the other side because it's more of a softer way to have the conversation. And we typically talk about implicit bias.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of explicit bias that happens.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that, I think we have learned certain conversations to have out in the open. But then behind the scenes, we have more of an explicit conversation around racism or race, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what we don't understand, those beliefs comes out publicly, right?
Yeah.
And you may not know it, right? But it comes out or slips out, whether it's through an activity that you decide to do as a teacher, whether it comes out in a social media, and I know that's fun to you.
Yeah, it's not.
You have a staff tweet a racist comment, right? Or they may have their own personal Facebook group and somebody record it and then post it out to the public.
Yeah.
Now it's an issue and everybody is shocked, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because we typically think the implicit bias is something that's hidden, it's not really talked about, it's some things that we have to reveal to people. But no, we have a lot of people who are practicing racism that we don't talk about. They may not put on the hood, they may not go out and ride a horse and burn a cross, right?
Yeah.
But there are people who have conversations, racist conversation or explicit conversations around race that we also need to continue to bring forth. I think in our political environment, I think people are still like grasping at the chest. These old movies, you would hear the woman in the scene would say, "I've never."
Yeah.
And people's reactions are like that. But I'm like, man, this has been happening. This has been going on. And in my opinion, when you think about politically, I think the things that we're hearing from some of our political leaders, people think that it started with our current leader.
Yeah.
It started with our last leader, our last leader, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just more obvious because this particular leader, what is said at a dinner table or in a home is actually said out loud. And so those things never it's sad, It's sad that even in 2020, we hear some of the things that are being said from our leaders that has like brought a brighter light on the situation that no, it has not gone away. Mm-hmm. Black and brown people have been telling you that it still exists. Yeah. And so we have to start trusting it and believe that, right? So I've been reading one of the books that I read, and it's an excellent book by Bettina Love, We Want to Do More Than Survive. And she does a great job of identifying that, when we don't believe black and brown people until their bodies are destroyed, are being harmed in public.
Right.
We don't believe it until it's a video.
Yep.
And even then, it's kind of like the conversation about, okay, let's wait till all of the facts come out. Let's see what did they do, right? We don't believe black and brown people until bodies are destroyed publicly. And that's been historic when you look at the right to vote. We
Yeah.
just lost a juggernaut in John Lewis, right? But we know the scene, right? We know the scene crossing Selma Bridge,
Yep.
and we saw the scene, right? And it's still hard for us to believe that we don't want to join the party
Yeah.
until we see bodies being beaten, and so
Which is yet another example.
yeah.
I mean, that's just another layer
That's
of an
another-
example.
Another layer of
Yeah.
example. So what we have to start being able to have more of a conversation about. Yes, the overt is still there, and not be afraid to have that conversation. Now let's talk about the other side that now is almost like a shock to the system, and that's where we've learned through Dr. Spikes and Dr. Swalwell is this framework around critical consciousness, that there are some practices that have been in play
Yeah.
that we have not been aware of, right? And so, and then our habits of response is to blame the families instead of looking at the system, right? We want to fix the family and not fix the system. And not only that, so you hear the system, and those who are listening, I'm doing a little
Yep.
quotation with my fingers, but the system also have players in it, right? And so you can't create a system without having somebody to run the system.
Yeah.
Right? And so both things are playing. And so how do you keep the conversation saying, yeah, we have a system in place, but also realizing how do we like perpetuate it? How do we keep it
Yeah.
going? And then how have we been complicit in maintaining that system? We also have to have a conversation. I love this. One parent responded to me. They were reaching out to us as far as how can I serve? What do you need
Yep.
from us as a community to be able to help the school system? And they left this statement like, well, we are Ames Community School District. And I'm like, it's kind of like we get caught up in the name, right? But this person highlighted the fact that we are a community,
Yeah.
right? And so what that highlighted for me is something that I always believe is that when we think about other areas that play a factor into the system, we focus a lot on when a student enters our building, right?
Yeah.
But we forget that we have people with faith backgrounds who go to church, and that there are conversations and statements being made from the church that they're learning, right? It's this idea of socialization, how we've been socialized. But then we also have media outlets, whatever news outlet you
Yep.
choose to watch, whatever podcast you choose to listen to,
Yep.
whatever social media outlet you choose to engage in, those things are playing a factor in what you
Yeah.
believe. We don't, all of those play a factor when an individual walks into the
Yeah.
building.
It all comes in.
Right. And then we talk about the family, right? But we forget all those other institutions as well.
Yeah.
We tend to think that the school system is like, students come off a spaceship and then they get,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
the yellow bus comes like changed from a spaceship, and then it lands, it turns into a yellow bus, and then it drives up to the building, all of our students get out. Like,
It's not how it works.
Not how it works. And so we have to be more intentional about having conversations to bring attention to those areas,
Yeah.
right? I say this a lot, and I've been saying a lot even in my conversations with my wife around, because we have a lot of conversations
Yeah.
around this topic, is that when I have conversations with teachers or administrators or I'm out in the public, it's not like I'm trying to convince you, I graduated from Iowa State.
Yep.
So I cheer for the Cyclones, right? Just by
Yep.
proximity, I cheer for the Cyclones.
Yep.
I'm not trying to convince you to be a Cyclone. If you are a Hawkeye fan, I want you to be a Hawkeye fan, but just don't be a racist Hawkeye fan, right?
Is
I'm
that
not
too
trying
much
to
to ask?
convince you,
Yeah.
right? I'm not trying
Right.
to. This is not. We don't take the same topic and strategies in our back and forth because I want to win a discussion,
Yeah.
or you're just trying to get me to believe some liberal, whatever, conservative, whatever
Yeah.
we use. It's not. I'm not trying to convince you to be a Cyclone.
Yeah.
I want you to be a Hawkeye. I want you to wave that black and yellow flag.
Yep.
I want you to do all of those things. I want you to have Hayden Fry tattooed on your arm, right? But just don't be racist with
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the part that we need to continue to drill down in and have more intense conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to get you to be a Democrat. I'm not trying to get you to be a Republican.
Yeah.
I just want you to be racist. Whatever you decided, just don't be racist, right?
Yeah.
And so
Well, what should be a low bar there?
right, it should be.
It should be.
But we
Yeah.
enter into those conversations with that same mindset and strategies, in our conversations, and that's not what it's about.
So I'll use myself as an example. I brainstorm topics on this podcast, and even what stories I cover for a school district, and I'll be fully transparent. Moderating this episode is much more intense for me than what I think it is for you. And I have these thoughts in my mind of, like, am I going to be articulate enough? Am I going to say the same things? No, I get it. I mean, but this is one of those topics that, like, you don't want to say the wrong thing yet by saying, but saying nothing, like us not doing this episode isn't the right decision, right. Because that doesn't further the conversation. So now take this example and apply it to, say, teachers. And then maybe also loop in the importance of professional development, because I know as a district we're providing some professional development for teachers around this. I'm not familiar with what that's going to look like this year. COVID has complicated a lot of things as far as our calendar and stuff like that goes. But there are teachers across the country who want to have this conversation and want to read more, but also don't want to say the wrong thing, because I think there is the reality and perception of, if I do say the wrong thing, there is accountability for that as well. So how do we balance all of that?
Right. Again, we have to understand that we're in the job of education, right? Mm-hmm. So it is about teaching, right? It's the same thing about how we approach discipline. It's about education. It's about teaching, right? And so it is always about making sure, again, I said it earlier, we have to embed in our schedule to where we're having professional learning around this topic, because we have not been taught to have conversations around this topic. Not only how to have the conversation, but how does it look in my everyday life, and how does it look in my everyday work? Mm-hmm. And so we typically think in terms of professional learning like this, okay, I gotta go to this professional learning, right? Yeah. And it's so far from what I want to do in my classroom that I just have to go and hold my breath.
Do my time.
Do my time. Until I can go back to the real work.
Yeah.
I've
been in those. I mean, fully transparent.
Too, right?
Come on. I've been in those.
Yes, that's why I can speak so clearly about it.
No, we all have.
But this particular topic, it's hard to say, okay, I need to learn about Lucy Calkins literacy and how to apply this in my classroom, right? And I know this is one of the heavy things, right? Yep. How do I apply literacy, this new curriculum around literacy into my classroom, right? But we want to make sure that the literacy piece is embedded, like, with culturally relevant teaching, right? And so in order for that to happen, we have to make sure that we are preparing our teachers to be able to. I can't tell you what to do once you go in the classroom. I need for you to carry that into the classroom so you can be creative in all of your literacy background and certification, but you can freely flow as a teacher, picking and choosing curriculum and activities in your classrooms that's not going to harm a student. I say this so passionately because we had a neighboring district, a district that I follow a lot, and we actually glean from this particular district as far as creating the equity office and like looking at some of the strategies and their diversity plans and different things like that. And it was put out in the news report that there was a teacher that gave an activity for their class around imagine if you were a slave.
I saw this.
And I don't know how many times this particular activity has been around in the news, right? And so it's almost like, again, like we're like in another time machine or something. Like we don't like engage in certain, but it still surprises me that even in a district that has been engaged in professional learning around equity and
race,
and grace, and been doing it for years, and that still happens in that district. So it's not even just about professional learning, but how do you engage teachers and administrators to know that this is not just a hot topic for today? Yeah. And that part is difficult, and I can talk about some things even in our own district. When you put in some work and then something goes out that creates like,
oh, I've been there, man.
I thought I was doing critical consciousness. And so, like, oh, yeah, sure, you're doing critical consciousness, right? But
Yeah.
this happens, and so it's almost like slipping through the fingers. Like sometimes it's like trying to grab oil, right?
Yeah,
And it
I
just
know.
slides through your fingers, right? And sometimes you miss staff because some staff needs more attention,
Yep.
right? And others is like,
Yeah.
I just need you to just go and be free. You're ready to go out there and just fire it up, right? And that takes some time too to make sure you get everyone, not just on board,
Yeah.
but to know that there will be some accountability, definitely.
Yeah.
And it may not be in the system to where you're called into HR, but the accountability may come from just exposure to the public, right?
Yeah.
And so now you're exposed that you have this thought process or whatever, and now we have to work through that.
Yeah.
And so when we talk in terms of professional learning, it just can't be about learning, but it has to be about this is real work, this is life work in every aspect of your life, but also from learning to action.
Yeah.
I've been seeing this a lot, when everybody was protesting and, right after George Floyd murder, and everybody was buying up books, right?
Yep.
So it was like books, you couldn't find a book
Oh,
on
no, I know.
equity, social
Yep.
justice, race, you couldn't find a book.
Yep.
And I love the fact that one of the professors that I follow made this statement, like, we just can't be satisfied with book studies.
Yeah.
We can't be satisfied
Right.
with book studies because we love to learn. We learn,
Oh, yeah.
talk about it.
Well, it's all theoretical
Let's
a lot of
let's
times. Yep.
theorize, but it has to be about action because people are going to believe what they see you
Yeah.
do, right? And so you can say, oh, we're going to have this book study, or oh, we have
Yeah.
critical consciousness. People want to see the action, and that's what matters. Those things matter to our community. Those things matter to our students. Those things matter to our parents. Those things matter to
Yeah.
our colleagues. What are we doing? What are the actions around the professional learning? Professional learning is one thing, but how are we holding each other accountable to make sure that it's being applied?
Well, and some of those, topics that, do make it into the public, I actually, I see that as part of the process too, because I feel like, I think maybe traditionally those would be topics that maybe didn't make it into the public before. And so I think as a district and for me personally, that is also part of the process in how as a system do we respond to this. And I'm not just talking necessarily about discipline, you alluded to that too. It's not just about that,
Right.
but how do you respond to it? How do you own it? How do you build capacity in people at every level? That's part of the process because there's no way that this is going to go smoothly.
No.
I mean, engaging in this work, not that you want hiccups to happen, but hiccups are going to happen, and you have to be prepared to own it and respond to it and learn and whatever those next steps are. That's part of the process. One of the things I did write down this quote. It was from Robin DiAngelo because you referred to book studies, and they are great, but I don't just see this work in because we're, it's a podcast about education. It's not just about professional development. This is personal development. There's no way to separate the two. In fact, I think the personal development almost has to happen first, and then you figure out how that does get embedded in your professional development. And the thing that she wrote was, any white person who wants to challenge racism and engage in anti-racist must work to specifically address the message they have internalized about black people, these stereotypes. And until you can really, and it's a ping pong in your head going back and forth, but it's as you engage in social media and watch the news or have conversations, you naturally do this, but that is the personal development as well. And I think as a system, providing the systematic professional development allows that personal engagement to happen. I've seen actually a lot of teachers who engaged in our critical consciousness over the last 2 years. Even a few weeks into it, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know this is what it was going to be like." And I'm sure you've heard so many other stories, just different. Everyone's at a different spot.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it, is to realize we are educators, and we do have to come with accountability, but we also have to come with grace as well, and we have to be patient, just like we would any student or learner.
Yeah.
And we have to engage it in that manner. And that's what I love about critical consciousness, the framework, is that it's around the individual being aware, right? Because again, and I'll say this, it's not about hiring a position,
Yeah.
Right? Because if I'm in your face, I can, like, if I use communication, I can be in front of you and have these great ideas. You can dialogue, you give me instruction about communication. I can go back and send an email totally different than what you had just given me advice on, right? So it's more than just about having a communication director, but it's also about how do you transfer from your knowledge and your skills into me, so when I go back and I'm creating newsletters, when I'm creating communication, that it's almost I'm using your knowledge embedded in my understanding and application when I go back to my office.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do. Our habit is also that we believe by creating a position and all things going to go away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We got a special ed director, so we're not going to have any issues around special education anymore. And my concern is that same application could potentially happen even to my position.
Sure.
I understand clearly with my position, I told you I was going to talk about this, is that, I know that this position is not a long-standing position, right? It's not necessarily a long-standing position. We can have a change of superintendent, we can have a change in a political leader, and they can say, don't spend our tax money on stuff like that, right? Poof, that position could be gone.
Yeah.
Principal, typically we're not going to say, well, we don't need principals in our schools, right? Even though I think a few years back there was some conversations around teacher leaders and stuff like that. But typically you're not going to hear, we don't need principals in our buildings, right? But so I know that this position is, I guess the word would be, is it dispensable or whatever. It's something that you can have for a minute and go away.
Sure.
Happened in Tennessee. Tennessee is a very conservative and whatever label you want to put on that particular state, but they followed suit with a statement that was made from our political leader, and they removed some of those positions around equity. And so why? Because we're using state funds to be able to pay for a position that is telling us that we're bad people, right?
Right.
We're bad Americans, right? But that's not what that position. So I know that the position can be here today and gone tomorrow. So what do you do with that? You have to multiply the understanding. It has to be embedded in all those positions. You can't catch, a political stance or issue if it's embedded in the system.
Right.
And so I would hope that as we continue this work, it becomes more embedded.
Yeah.
You don't have to call special ed director to have an understanding of how to lead an IEP meeting.
Right.
Because as a leader or a teacher, you're going to understand how to go in there. You're going to have the knowledge and understanding because of the guidance from the special education director.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be dependent
on
that position to function in whatever you're doing in the building.
We could keep going,
Yes, sir.
but we have hit our limit on this episode. So I want to thank you, Dr. Jones, for not only this episode but our previous episode as well. These are conversations that we need to continue to have. So for everyone listening, thanks again for listening to this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast. Be sure to share it with all your family, all your friends, and we are on iTunes, Google Play, and on YouTube. So until next time, thanks again.